Hi everyone, welcome to your discussion today on this topic, which is the learning curve theory. Friends, this particular concept, the learning curve, has its own significant relevance in a lot of sectors. So, be it a manufacturing sector or maybe even a service sector, we would want to understand and appreciate the significance of this particular theory per se. How does it really help businesses take a decision about their costs? Okay, a broader idea of learning curve is nothing else but then we are saying that if there is a process that is repetitive, which is expected to happen over a period of time, then ideally speaking, people who are doing that process or let's say undertaking that process would initially take a longer period of time because they would want to learn about how does the process work. They would have their own ways of dealing with the things, and gradually they start gaining that learning on how to deliver the process the best way, and eventually the time taken to perform that activity or the process would start declining. Okay, and it would reach up to a point where they reach the minimum amount of time in which that process can be undertaken. All right, now why does it matter to a business in terms of determining its costs? Let's try to understand it with the help of, let's say, an example here. Okay, let us say that there is a company X that is manufacturing some component P1 on behalf of its customer. All right, the order sizes is, let us say, 1000 units. Okay, so the customer has approached company X and the customer has said that he wants 1000 units and he seeks a quotation back from, let's say, company X in terms of how much is going to be the charge, right? So let us say that there could be a material cost. So raw materials might be required, which probably are, let's say, $2 per unit, right? And then we are talking about the labor cost as well. Now here we are saying that the labor cost is charged on the basis of time, right? The labor cost is charged on the basis of time and not on a per unit basis. Okay, right? And that's normal. That's quite logical to use this assumption that the labor is being paid on the basis of the time they spend on a particular job or the process, and that is how you would do the decision making part as well, right? And now if you put it like this, that the process is repetitive and there is expected to be a learning effect, right? This term safely says that yes, initially you would require more time to do the process or do manufacturing of the product, but gradually you learn how to deliver that thing, right? So the time that you may take to produce the first unit would be a little higher probably the time you might take to produce the second and subsequent units, right? But having said that, there would always be a minimum time that you need to kind of have to make a particular component. So that means that even after you have achieved the learning entirely, you still require some time to make the goods. Okay, so what we are saying is, in terms of, let's say, the presentation part of it, if I were to plot it on a graph, if I say this is the time taken and this is the number of units, right? So as and when the number of units increase, my time starts to decline and probably would reach a minimum amount of time which is any case required to make a particular unit. So let's say this is the point where the learning curve is not available anymore. Okay, but then you would see that this is a declining time period here, right? The time that you take to make, let's say, the first product is very high, but then when you move forward, the time starts to decline and it reaches a minimum level where this is pretty much, parallel to. So this is the fixed kind of a time that you would spend, let's say, to make any of the products going forward, right? Of course, there are some more assumptions. I'm going to talk about that further, but importantly, what we need to remember here is that if the labor charge is, labor is charged on the basis of time, and I'm saying that, let's say, the first unit takes, let us say, 20 minutes or let's say 20 minutes to make for the first unit, right? And let us say finally that my labor cost is $10 per hour. Okay, or let's say $15 per hour, right? Here what I need to understand here is, for the first unit, effectively my labor cost would be $5, that is 15 into 20 by 60. I'm taking 1/3 of the hour, my hourly rate is 15, so automatically my labor cost for first unit is going to be $5 there. Is it okay? But then if I go back to my customer and tell him that my material cost is going to be $2 per unit and my labor cost is going to be $5 per unit, right? Then I'm not quoting him the right pricing there. Okay, and that is where I would see a business challenge, right? Especially in case of a very competitive business environment, I really need to take into consideration the impact of learning curve. Okay, and it is not just the manufacturing, even the service industry. Talk about any shared service industry, or maybe a consulting, or maybe a BPO or a KPO, for example, right? These entities or these businesses have to put forth a value proposition back to the client by offering this learning curve methodology, right? They also understand that this industry works on a kind of a per hour basis. It is a time which, for which they charge back to their client based in different countries, right? So accordingly, this learning curve would have a clear implication on this business as well. Okay, this entire industry would survive in terms of how do you give the proposition back to your client in terms of what is the value add that you are offering at the lowest possible cost, right? So quoting a fixed price of labor for the processes may not be the right approach. You are likely to lose out your business to your competitors, and you do not want that to happen at all. Okay, so when you have all these things coming in, what you need to kind of remember is, of course, quantify or measure the impact of learning curve. Okay, right? So that is one underlying principle of this approach, which is importantly required to be understood and recognized by businesses. Is it okay so far? Right? How do we do that? And before we even do the calculation, we are even going to talk about, for example, what are the assumptions on this, right? The broader assumptions, and they would work in a practical manner also, is that the process is repetitive, right? So if you're let's say doing manufacturing, you know that it's the same component which needs to be made over and over again, right? So you would have a repetitive process coming in, and gradually when the learning comes, then naturally the time taken in the subsequent product would be a little lesser. Okay, we are also saying that the process is more labor intensive. Okay, of course, if it's mechanized, if it's all done by machines, then there is no learning curve, because the machines don't learn. Machines would simply process and they would take their own time on a very standardized basis. So we are saying again that essentially the process should be a labor intensive process as well as a repetitive one. And third, we are also saying that there is least employee turnover. Okay, what does it mean? We are saying that if there are some people who are doing the process repeatedly, it is expected that they continue to do it, because if a new person is coming in, because there is too much of a employee turnover, that is a lot of people are leaving and new people are joining in, then the learning curve effect would not essentially come, because what is going to happen is a new person comes, he again tries to get the insight and things like that. So that is how you would be able to, or you would be kind of looking at this assumption to follow, to be able to quantify the impact of the learning curve. Is it okay? Right? So these are the broader assumptions that we talk about. Apart from that, now if I look at it in terms of how to really kind of quote in terms of what is the pricing that you are charging to your client, we are talking about something called as how much is the learning effect, right? What is the percentage of the learning effect? Okay, the way one should be reading this is that, let us say the learning effect is, for example, say 90%. Okay, what does it imply? It implies that the moment, or let's say the time taken, or the cumulative average time taken reduces to 90% every time the output is doubled. The cumulative average time taken reduces to 90% average every time the output is doubled. Let's even talk this in terms of what does it actually imply. We are saying that, for example, my first unit takes, let us say, 100 minutes. Okay, it takes 100 minutes to be made. The moment it is doubled, so we are saying that, so here we are saying that average time per unit, of course, is 100 minutes. Is it okay? Right? Now I'm saying that the moment I go to, so this is not first unit, I would rather say 1 unit. Okay, the moment I go to 2 units, the moment I double the output, my average time now goes to 90 minutes here, right? That is something which is an important consideration. We are saying that 1 unit has taken 100 minutes. If I make 2 now, it is going to take 90 minutes per unit. Okay, right? Likewise, if I go to further doubling it, now I'm saying it is, for example, becoming 81 minutes per unit. Please bear in mind, it is per unit, the average time here. Okay, now if I really take it like this, let's say my total time, here it is 100, this is 90 into 2, that is 180, which means that my additional time, the moment I do the doubling of the output, if this is 180 for 2 and this is 100 for 1, then I'm taking 80 minutes more to produce my second unit here, right? So I would not worry about this thing. This is purely could be on the basis of calculations. I'm looking at the learning curve effect as 90% here with respect to this time given, which for example means if I go to 81 minutes or an average time per unit for 4 units, this becomes 81 times 4, that would be 324. Is it okay? Right? Now imagine if I say 1 unit takes 100 minutes, without learning curve I would have said 4 unit take actually 400 minutes, which is not right because my average time taken would be 81 minutes per unit, or effectively 324 minutes per in total, for example, right? So that is where you see the learning curve impact. And if I say that the labor is based or labor is paid on the basis of time, then automatically if I'm quoting this pricing for my labor, overpricing to my client, right? And the clients would be smart enough to obviously go to some other service provider. They would safely say that we are not getting any value add because ideally speaking you're not giving us back the benefits that you would have received by doing the process over a longer period of time, right? So this is resulting into an overpricing in a very competitive environment, in a highly competitive environment, the shared services, manufacturing, whatever business we talk about, this becomes a nuisance. And that is where you see that this learning curve theory has a significant impact in any industry which is trying to cater to its customers. Of course, based assumptions that we talked about a while ago, this theory would have its own relevance there. Okay, right? Now, the challenges, or let's say even on the calculation part, we might spend some time and look at it. What is it the businesses should be knowing, right? What is it the businesses are required to understand? One thing, up to what level of output the learning curve is expected to remain. Okay, right? For example, we said that there is an order for 1000 units, right? Up to what level of this output, up to what point in time the learning curve would take place? That is, until when will the time get reduced, and after that point in time we would say now it cannot reduce any further. You certainly require at least few minutes. For example, if I talk about the 100 minutes, it might so happen that, let's say, the learning curve would happen until, for example, 100 units only, right? Now what does it signify? One thing, that if I look at from the curve's perspective, and let's say this is my 1000 units, right? So my learning curve would probably be something like this. This is not the best shape, but here my learning curve stops at 100 units. Okay, so what does it mean? We are saying that every unit after 100 units will take the same amount of time as used in making 100th unit. Every unit after 100 units will take the same amount of time as used in making the 100th unit. Is it okay? So what we are saying now is apply learning curve up to 100 units, okay, and then use the time taken for making 100th unit for remaining units there. Why do you need to do that? Because unless you know this, unless you are calculating this, you are not sure how much the labor cost are you going to incur, right? So that's the reason why this particular calculation would be absolutely important, okay, right? Having done this, the question now emerges in terms of how to quantify this, right? How to measure what is the time taken when you look at, let's say, a learning curve of, for example, 90%, okay, right? So we are saying here, for example, in this case, say that my learning curve is lying up to, or learning curve remains up to 100 units, and after that there is no learning curve. We are using a mathematical approach where we say using the learning curve, we are saying that the average time per unit may be calculated as a times x to the power b. Okay, average time per unit would be a times x to the power b, where a is the time taken for the first unit, okay, x refers to the nth unit up to which learning curve remains, or I may even say the nth unit for which the average time is calculated. Gonna explain that in a minute. And B refers to the learning curve value. Okay, right? So we have again some statistical measures. I was a mathematical approach how to calculate the learning curve. We make use of the log tables to do that, right? So as of now, I wouldn't want you to worry about the log table thing here, but broadly what I'm looking at is we are saying that if I need to calculate how much is my average time taken up to, let's say, 100 units. So we're saying the learning curve is lying up to 100 units. Let's try to calculate that in terms of what is the learning curve up to 100 units, or maybe I may say what is my average time up to, let's say, 30 units. Okay, I can take any number obviously just for the sake of calculation. So what we are saying is my average time up to 30 units would be A as in 100 minutes. That is the time taken to make the first unit. Okay, X refers to 30 and B refers to the value at 90% learning curve. Is it okay? Right? So the way we calculate is simply need to obviously place the numbers here. We are saying that when we have this value, of course, this is an important calculation after this, because all we are doing after this is just calculating those numbers here. Okay, so we are saying the average time up to 30 units would be 100 multiplied by 30, and the learning effect at 90% would be a value of minus 0. For example, 152, right? How do we use this? Basically, we make use of logs to arrive at this value. So if you're using a scientific calculator, it's quite straightforward to even calculate this. But let us say, simplistically, if I were to calculate this, I would use my scientific calculator to arrive at this value. So if I were to look at that, so don't have it handy, whatever it comes to. So we are saying that this particular value would give me my average time per units or per unit for 30 units here. Is it okay? Right? So this would help me quantify how much labor cost I need to charge from my customer, considering the learning curve for the job, right? The whole idea to look at this model, the whole idea to do this calculation is to arrive at the true cost that your business incurs while undertaking a job, so that your pricing is competitive, you are sure to win the business back from the customer. You're not overpricing, or you're not overcharging your customer, or for that matter, even theoretically, if I look at it, if it is not possible to charge your customer beyond a point in time, are you doing the right set of calculations for your profitability or not? Right? So that is something which is the underlying principle of learning curve. How do we calculate these? How do we, let's say, apply this in form of, let's say, practical scenarios, is something that we want to discuss at this, after this point in time, right? So that is something from my side again. That's where it ends, by the way, and wish you all the best for your preparation for the concepts here on the management accounting, and good luck with your preparation, and all the best. Do keep watching our lectures at AVC Learning, and take care. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.